Today we're doing some work on the electrical system. I had put something in place as a temporary experiment and it failed. So what I have here is what I call my alternator charger, which is plugging this into the 12-volt cigarette lighter adapter here. Notice it has a nice little on-off switch. The idea being that when the engine's running, the engine will then charge my little battery here, and it will also provide power through a different connection over to the refrigerator to keep that battery charged. So I have the two different battery systems. This one here, which operates the max air fan and some lights and some other things, and then the special Bouge RV battery that actually goes into the refrigerator compartment. I'll show you that in a moment. So this works out pretty well overall for our needs for our one-night camping trip. Where we failed was in the morning when we took our little 400-watt kettle and tried to heat up water to make our pour-over coffee. That's where things went south. First, we'll take a closer look at what we have going on here. So again, from the 12-volt outlet here, we come down to a splitter with two 12-volt outlets. One of them powers this battery, and one of them goes to a little inverter here, which then goes on to the refrigerator battery. This is the problem. The little 400-watt inverter wasn't powerful enough for the 400-watt kettle. And so working with what I have on hand, as I do, because I already had that little 400-watt inverter, but I also have this 1,000-watt inverter. This is a throwback from when I used to drive tractor trailers, lower 48 in Canada. Yes, I drove big trucks for a living. It was a long time ago. This is probably 25 years old. So we're going to run a real quick test on the battery to see if it still works. And here we're going to do a quick test with jumper cables connecting from the battery down to the inverter. And you may not be able to see it real well, but that light on the kettle is on. So here's the new plan. This obviously can't work off of a 12-volt cigarette lighter adapter, so it has to connect directly to the battery. I don't want to run cables from the battery location, which is right in front of the driver's seat, all the way back to the back. So this will now be mounted back here. Good thing I have this plywood that goes all the way down. Who thought that was going to come in handy? So this will mount on that, connect it, 80 amp fuse, cutoff switch. So try to make this as safe as possible. Again, this is well over 20 years old. It is tested. However, I do worry about electrical systems and having an always on connection. So I'll always have a kill switch that will remain off at all times unless we're actually using the vehicle for the purposes of charging the batteries and running our kettle and other things like that. So safety first. Let's get it all mounted up. In the Ram ProMaster, the location of the battery is quite literally here. So we're gonna have to take these off, remove this panel, and access the battery before we can put in the cables to the inverter. These have slots on it. You would think maybe a large screwdriver, get that in there. But no, in fact, the best tool to get these out is a washer, maybe a quarter. They just turn this way, that fits in there perfectly. Why not a screwdriver? Because I can't get a large screwdriver in a space like this. And I certainly can't get a screwdriver here. Okay. All right, so it's a little bit stuck, and I know where it's stuck. There's actually two tabs right here under the brake pedal. And I know that because I watch a lot of YouTube videos. So it won't break it if you're careful. Just can I get in there and put some additional pressure in this spot as you take it out. I say, and it still doesn't come out. Okay, there you go. So I ended up putting my hand under here like this, and a little downward pressure, and it's out. This is what we have to work with. I'm going to need to get the 4-gauge wires that I bought for the inverter in here, and somehow under this or somehow kind of go back to the bench, which is back here. So let me think about that for a while. I'm popping off the plastic cover, put that wherever it is it'll go. Now I have to decide where I'm going to connect the cables to. So I don't want to connect it to any of the ones that already have connections to them. So this seems to be the best option, to be able to come off the side and just go this way and back over to the bench. In terms of the negative, that's easy. We can just take the one on the end here. That's fine. So what size lugs? I have two different sizes. I've got a 3/8 and I've got a 15/16. So what size is this? Okay, that's pretty big. And that will work. So 15/16 works there. 15/16 a little too big for the negative, but will still work fine. So that's our choice, 15/16 lug. How to get the wire from the battery back to the bench. I think we're going to have to go through here and under here and into the step well and down through here and up and maybe through the column, or maybe just kind of snaking around that way. So that's going to require this whole step to be removed. All right, we're going to go ahead and take the step out. No matter what I do, I'm going to end up being in the way of the video. So real quick, just pop these out. Yeah, I say real quick. All right, so carefully you pop these out. It's a standard Phillips screw. You just take that out. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this and pull this out, and then I'll show you the result. No, came right out. Oh, look, extra stuff. What do we have here? Where do you think that came from? It looks like if we come off the battery, we'll be able to go shoot right through here and be able to come across like this and up through here and not have any problems with the step or getting in the way of anything else, because you've already got components here. In fact, I've already got a place to put some of the wires. All right, we figured out where to route the cables through. So the next step is to go ahead and put the lugs on the cables. And of course I have the right size lugs, and I've got the heat shrink wrap, and I have my heat gun. No, I don't. I have a heat gun. Where is the heat gun? I have no idea. I just spent the last 30 minutes looking in all the places I thought it could be in. And now we're thinking we may have left it in Colorado. We use the heat gun because we put together little gift boxes for our Modern Moose guests. And one of the things we provide are little bottles of sunscreen with a carabiner. We put our little Modern Moose labels on there, and then we seal it with some shrink wrap. That's use the heat gun to shrink that on there. Often we create those in Colorado, because if we created them here in Ohio and then took them up to 9,000 feet elevation, the first time you use them, they would explode on you, and that would be an unpleasant guest experience. So as thoughtful as we try to be, I think we just screwed ourselves with that one and left some of our tools there. So try the hairdryer and see how that goes. I have extra sleeves, so I'm going to experiment with one of them and see how it works. Okay, so that took some time, and it did show promise. So potentially with a lot of time, that's feasible. So let's go ahead and get the lugs crimped on, and we'll give it a shot. Worst case scenario, back to Lowe's. I've got the first lug crimped on, and we've got the heat shrink here. And what I'm going to do is just set this up over here so that the hair dryer can work on the heat shrink while I perform other tasks. Alright, so this one is done enough. It's not coming off. It's not loose, so it will do the job I need it to do. And for the record, no, this is not the correct crimper. It is the crimper I have, and it did work. It does not make the nicest looking crimps, but that is basically as clamped on there as you're going to get. And again, not pretty, but absolutely functional. Next, if you're familiar with hair dryers, you know you can't just run a hair dryer forever. It will potentially harm the hair dryer. So I have a spare, and I will run that one for a while I perform other tasks. All right, I've got the lugs connected, shrink wrap shrinked enough. It's not going anywhere. And now what we're going to do is get it through here and placed where we want it to place it. First, I'm going to wrap it with electrical tape. Even though electrical tape's not going to be 100%, it could still arc if it touches the battery. It is some amount of protection, and some is better than nothing. I don't want this to energize until I'm ready for it to energize. So we'll just do a little bit of insurance. This is a 4-gauge heavy-duty welding wire. I got this off of Amazon. It's very flexible for a 4-gauge wire. It does have high reviews, and it is pure copper, stranded, which is also very important. According to the wire sizing guides that I found online and on my YouTube videos I watch, I could have gotten away with a 6-gauge wire because of the distance between the battery and where I'm going to have my inverter. 6 would have been fine. Now we're only going to pull at most 1,000 watts, and I have an 80 amp breaker. So again, 6 fine, 4 better, and why not? It was $6 more. If you undersize the wire, you have potential for heat and possibly fire. If you oversize the wire just slightly, then there's going to be less heat and less chance of fire. It's just a little extra peace of mind. This is going to need a cutout here so that this can snap back on completely. What we're going to do is we're just going to notch this out. It's not going to be professional, but it will be functional. Now this can fit on here, and this can be connected and go through here. Now we've got the cables about where they need to be in the battery box. Now we're going to route these through here and back that way. Oh, it would have been great if that just poked right out the back. You can see where it is poking out the back a little bit. This right here is where it was looking to poke through, and it does seem like that's a bit of a cutout. I might be able to just push through that or manipulate it from this side to try to make it work. Let's see. Oh, look. I know you can't see that. Okay, I see the cable, look. Okay. And no, I do not know why I'm whispering. Let's see if I can get that to come through. Oh, there you go. All right. This is metal. So I'm worried about this cutting into that as this gets stepped on and the vibration going down the road. Let me think about that for a few minutes. All right, this is what I came up with. I stole a small piece of leather from my wife's workshop. This is extremely durable rawhide, and I'd like to wrap it around the wires and then shove it up in here so that it's positioned like this. I'm going to fit the step back in to make sure it clears this. That when it was coming across here, it came out too far for the step. So there's a little divot here. So I think if we take the southern route here, it'll tuck in there a lot nicer, and this will be able to compress a little bit. When you're opening up compartments in your van that you typically don't see, like here, take a few minutes to inspect it. I'm looking for any signs of rust or paint that is chipped off or not in good shape. Everything here looks good as far as that goes. How many times are you going to get the chance to clean that out? So might as well take advantage of it while you have the opportunity. Wow, that fit a lot better than than the last try. So I think we're good. I'm going to go ahead and put all this back together. You don't need to watch me do that. Okay, the step went back in nicely. I put on the additional trim pieces here and here. And again, these are just laying in here at this time. They're not actually connected. Oh, this is working out. Okay, how about that? 10 snips. Hey, this is my progress so far. What I've got done is the installation of the kill switch, the installation of the 80 amp fuse, and connection to the inverter. So all of that is now complete. My wiring is not perfect, but it's functional. Next, I've got the battery connected here and here. And it's time to test to make sure that everything is functional. So what we're going to do is turn on the switch. I see a light. I'm going to test and see if I have electricity. All right, I've had the opportunity to install all the components, and we just ran that test. So I'm going to start getting some things buttoned up here. So remember, we have our inverter here running directly off of the battery. I've got the kill switch there. It's currently in the on position as the vehicle is running. I have one extension cord running all the way to the back where we have our additional connections. I haven't done the wire management yet. I'll clean this up here in a few minutes. But this is the extension cord coming from the inverter. It goes into this three-way, and it has this one is going to our little battery bank, and this one's going to a power strip on the kitchen side. So while the engine is running and the inverter is on, it's actively charging our little battery bank here. And this is the connection for the max air fan. This is a connection going to a power strip here that runs some of the electronics on the driver's side of the van. That includes the toilet room and power outlets for our cell phones and laptops. This is the power strip on the kitchen side. It has a couple of connections. One is the connection to the outlet in the kitchen, and the other one is the connection to the refrigerator that charges the refrigerator battery as we're driving. So on the driver's side, the power strip I showed you a few moments ago also powers this. We just keep this tucked underneath the bench, and we can use that for different uses while we're traveling. and also come back here by the bed. I have this little power strip connected in as well. So those two power strips I just showed you are running off of the battery bank, so that when the vehicle is turned off and we're parked, the battery bank is on and powering all those things. The sun is just now coming up. We're going to do the test that we should have done before this last weekend's trip. We're going to make coffee. Okay, so now the test. I've got the inverter connected, all the wiring done, and it's time to plug this in and see what happens. Now, we're not fancy coffee drinkers, but the whole idea of the pour over started when we had the little 400 watt inverter that plugs in a 12 volt plug in the back here. This is rated at 400 watts, although it was tested at 360 watts. So we thought that was going to work, and it did not work. So this is a setup we have now, and while that is heating up, I'm going to go ahead and get my coffee set up. I can hear it boiling now, so I'm going to go ahead and shut this off. As the sun continues to come up and I'm enjoying my coffee here, this is truly the first cup of coffee made in the van. It is MooseVan coffee, officially, and it's actually pretty good. Like I said, we're not fancy coffee drinkers. When we did our test run last weekend, we stayed over at a Harvest Host on Saturday night, and we drove about 90 minutes to Pennsylvania, stayed in a winery. It was just fantastic, every bit of it, except for in the morning when we went to make our coffee, and that's when we blew the fuses and we had no coffee. So we're out in the middle of nowhere. There's no Starbucks, there's no McDonald's, there's no any place you would normally go for coffee. So it was gas station coffee. And at a gas station, it could either be surprisingly good coffee, or it can be exactly what you expect. And this was exactly what we expected it would be. It was so horrible. I mean, again, not a coffee snob. I've had some bad coffee, but I couldn't even finish that cup of coffee. It was so bad. It would have been so much nicer to have just stayed in camp, had our breakfast in the van, had our coffee in the van, and had a normal morning routine, as I like. It's just a very simple setup with an inverter, again, free. I had that from my trucking days over 20 years ago. The little Yeti power pack, free. Had that for a few years, used it camping and other purposes. Extension cords, power strips. The refrigerator we had for some time, actually. So again, very low cost or free item. Our very, very, very budget electrical system in the van is actually quite nice. I think it's going to be very functional for us, and it's going to give us exactly what we need. Now, again, we don't have air conditioning, I don't have a microwave, we don't have induction, we don't have any of those things. So we're pretty bare bones, and what we have, it works.